Hi, I'm Ray Pinney. Welcome to a special edition of Education Matters. I'm here with George Scott from the Traumatic Loss Coalition with Rutgers. Today we're going to be talking about some of the effects of childhood experiences. But I heard a story that you told, and it's called the River Story. Could you please, because this is going to lead into our conversation about reaching all kids.
Yeah, the story actually is used a lot in suicide work to talk about going upstream, but the way that we use it here is, if you imagine there's a village on the banks of a river, and every morning fishermen would get up and they would be enjoying the dawn, and they'd be enjoying the solitude of the morning. Well, this one morning while the fisherman was there, he heard a scream, and he looked, and there's a kid in the river, a child in the river. So he drops his pole, he runs out, he saves the kid, big celebration. Well, this happened repeatedly over the next week or so, until one time when he was there actually were two screams because there were two kids. And when he tried to save them both, he wasn't able to do that. So one of the kids died, no celebration, but there was a meeting of the Council of Elders. And the chief of the council wanted to know, what can we do to save our kids? So there were lots of ideas that they could use. And then finally the chief stood up and he said, well, they're all great ideas, but I have a question. Why the hell are so many of our kids in the river? That's kind of the story today of parents, educators. A lot of our kids are in the river. We need to figure out why, because we need to be able to save our kids before they get there.
Yeah, and there's something called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experience. Could you explain what that is in the study around that? Because I find that fascinating.
Sure. And this actually, my introduction to it came as a result of a suicide death in Monmouth County when I was there. And ACEs began in, the research was done in like 95, 96. The two researchers were looking to answer a question whether or not environment has an effect on well-being. Actually, they were looking whether or not there was a connection between obesity and environment. And what they found, they interviewed 17,000 people in the Kaiser Permanente hospital setting. And what they found is there are certain events that the younger a child is, or the more frequently these events happen, then the outcomes start to get worse and worse, both for emotional problems and also physical problems. So that's why the research is called the adverse childhood experience, to let us know what we're seeing, and if you want to make it relevant to the classroom, what is the teacher seeing, what's behind the behavior, is there anything that we can do to help kids who have had these high ACEs scores.
What are some of those adverse
Yeah,
events?
there are 10 questions in the original study. One of them, for instance, is about chronic humiliation. Did you grow up in a family in which you were put down, humiliated, laughed at? Another would be physically abused. Another might be sexually abused. Did you live in a family where there was a mental illness, a suicide attempt? Did somebody in your family go to jail? Did you bear witness to your mother or the mother figure being assaulted? Things that for little children's brains, it begins to change their brain, and therefore it begins to change the way they see the world and respond to the world.
And so the study found, and this is, I guess, 20
years.
Yeah, that there were long-term effects.
Long-term effects, both physical and also emotional.
Okay, that sounds kind of depressing to me, but I think what we're starting to learn now is, can we maybe use that information to help students now?
Exactly. In fact, what we're doing through the Traumatic Loss Coalition, we're trying to help parents understand it so they can adjust what goes on. We refer to it as the nest, the home. Can they adjust the parenting style or the stressors that are in the family? And can teachers then also adjust, and what we say is create sanctuary for kids, who in fact, it doesn't lower the bar, it makes a healthier environment where kids can give the best performance.
So this not only helps the kids long-term in their life with ways to cope with problems, probably make them healthier, but it also will help in the classroom.
No question. And what we find is the healthier the kids are, emotionally and physically, the better their school performance. So, for instance, if you get a kid who grew up in a nest with chronic humiliation, we have to be really careful that we don't create classrooms where there are sarcastic statements made. That's humiliation, because it triggers a reaction from the kid. So sensitivity to it, a lot of teachers get it, and they begin to modify not their content, but their delivery.
So I guess my final thought in this area is, sometimes we feel, okay, I just have to drill this math problem, we have to do all this, but they can't really learn until we deal with some of these emotional issues.
Yeah, you know, what we know now in brain science, that is the more stressed a kid is, the less they can access those parts of the brain that teachers expect. Memory is not good, concentration is not good, recall is not good. So if we can create calmer classrooms or healthier classrooms, then the brain responds accordingly, and therefore then the instruction sticks.
So if a teacher says, I don't have time for this, you might say you don't have time not to do it.
Yeah, and what we always say is this is not a program, this is a way of you building relationships with students, preschool through high school and into college.
Okay, I'd like to thank George Scott for joining me on this episode of Education Matters, where we talked about ACE, Adverse Childhood Experience.